Shana Tova. Happy 5782. First thing, before we go any further, we should have a moment of gratitude for being able to gather once again. I know that for many of us, this may be the first time that you've been in this sanctuary for maybe 2 years. Probably for many of us as well, this might be the largest gathering you have experienced in almost as much time. You're okay. It's all good. It's going to be okay. Just take it all in. Let's say Shehecheyanu at this point to acknowledge how amazing it is to be together at this time. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Shehecheyanu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Praise to you, God, for giving us life and sustaining us and enabling us to reach this extraordinarily holy moment. Second thing, I think we need to acknowledge that even though some of us are here in the sanctuary, many others are not, we are still not free from this pandemic anxiety. And even as we gather at this moment, we continue to pray hard for a time when we can gather without any concern for our health and safety. So I'll be talking today about what it means to gather as Jews. But first, a brief introduction to this year's high holiday theme, which is Make It Meaningful. When I went to Israel for the first time in the summer of 1987, on the Alexander Muss High School in Israel program, I had a very good friend named Josh Kasoy. We were singing buddies. He wrote songs and played guitar quite well, and I helped sing and harmonize. Josh was from Houston, and although we were both entering 12th grade, he had already been through rehab for drug addiction. So he was a sort of fascinating character to me in that his life had been so challenged in a way that mine had not. And he looked the part, too. When we visited the Dead Sea with our group, as we were getting out of the bus, 2 plainclothes Israeli policemen pulled Josh and me to the side and searched us, I presume for drugs, paying much more attention to Josh than to me. There were none, of course, but I'll never forget that. And at one point, during the summer, Josh adopted this stray kitten that had found its way into our dorm. For several days, the kitten and Josh were inseparable. Then one morning, Josh awoke to find the kitten lying on his belly, dead. We were all very upset by the loss of this cute kitten who had wandered into our lives only to leave abruptly. We gave the cat a very moving funeral. In retrospect, the story reminds me of the end of the book of Jonah, which we will read on the afternoon of Yom Kippur, in which Jonah feels compassion for a dead squash plant when he expresses remorse. God rebukes Jonah for caring so deeply for a plant, a squash, after failing to have compassion for the people of Nineveh. God, of course, having created both the squash and the Ninevites, correctly framed Jonah's earlier failure. How could Jonah have felt more for the dead plant than for people? What made this tiny homeless cat meaningful to us? It was that it had become a part of our lives, part of our story. It had given us partnership, a few hours of cuddly enjoyment. It was a living thing that Josh could care for above and beyond his own needs, make him feel protected and needed and responsible for this life. It gave him, at least for a couple days, a special sense of purpose. And then it was gone. One of the themes to which I regularly return is how engagement with Jewish life can bring us meaning. My mission as your rabbi is to ensure that Judaism is meaningful to you, that your involvement is never merely checking the box or a mere reflex, or something that you do just to please your parents or grandparents or because you feel guilty. Practicing Judaism actually helps you improve your life, your community, and the world. And the key to making that happen is to find the meaning. But it's not like meaning just wanders in like a stray kitten. Rather, you have to make it happen. To borrow an idea from physics, you have to put a little work into the system, some activation energy. If you just let Yom Kippur go by, or Pesach, or Hanukkah, or Sukkot, or Shavuot, or Tisha B'Av, or your nephew's Brit Milah, or your friend's wedding, to let it go by without framing it properly, you will not benefit from the experience. Yes, I know that is hard, particularly if you do not have the tools with which to frame things Jewishly. But I'll let you in on a little secret. That's why I'm here. I can give you those tools. We at Beth Shalom can give you these tools. All these people who work here, that's why we are here. To help you make Judaism meaningful. We offer ideas and activities and programs and discussions and printed material all the time to help you frame your life, your Jewish life, with meaning. And that is what we will be talking about over these high holidays. Our theme this year is Make It Meaningful, by which I mean, don't let life go by without paying attention, without putting it all in Jewish perspective, without putting in the activation energy that is the catalyst for change in yourself and the world. That is what our tradition is for. And we're going to look at this idea of making it meaningful through 4 perspectives. Today, first day of Rosh Hashanah, we're going to talk about gathering, how we gather. Tomorrow, second day of Rosh Hashanah, we're going to talk about learning, about enriching our lives through the wisdom of Jewish text. At Kol Nidrei, evening of Yom Kippur, we're going to talk about the meaning that we might derive from engaging with the state of Israel. And on Yom Kippur Day, we're going to talk about framing holy moments. What I hope you will come away with is new ideas on how our tradition can fill your life with meaning so that you can improve your outlook and reap the benefits of a purposeful life. And that we as a community, and really the whole world, may be improved also through your engagement with Judaism. I reconnected with my friend Josh many years later when I moved to Houston in 1996, back in my engineering days. And almost coincidentally, he was part of a group of friends who were running a ragtag theater troupe with which I had become involved. Sadly, Josh died of a drug overdose in 2002. After I had left Houston, returned to Israel for a while, and then ended up in cantorial school in New York. Reflecting on his tragic life and death, I understand that the meaning embedded in our friendship was, of course, much deeper than what we had with that poor kitten for a few days. But the process was the same: time and energy invested in friendship, in singing and traveling together, in being harassed by police together, and all the little experiences and moments that make for the depth of relationships. Embedded within those moments, in the interstices of life, we find meaning. I do not think that our ancestors thought too deeply about meaning in being Jewish. They didn't have to. Judaism was the scaffolding of their lives, the life cycle events, the holidays, the laws and customs and foods, and all sorts of boundaries within their lives. They lived and breathed Judaism, knowing that they were different from their non-Jewish neighbors. But, like the fish who does not see the water, Jewish living was simply the fabric of their lives. It was not religion in the cold, distant sense with which we often understand it here in America. Rather, being a Jew was to live with Judaism as the spiritual wrapped up in the mundane, while keeping in step with the calendar of our tradition. It's what made them a people, distinct from the others around them and connected to each other. That is not really true for us. We can choose to be here or not. We can choose to open the siddur, to belong to a synagogue, to give tzedakah, to avoid chametz on Pesach, and so forth, or not. Many of us in America, many Jews have opted out. And of course, I find that very sad. That's the great irony of contemporary America. On the one hand, we live here more freely than at any other time in Jewish history, but we also have the freedom not to live a Jewish life. But I think the reason that so many Jews have opted out of Judaism is because they were unable to find Jewish engagement meaningful. I cannot count the number of people who tell me about how their grandmother used to make the most wonderful Shabbat and holiday dinners and how they all came together and they were so special, and then Grandma died. And with her, that custom, which was so meaningful for the whole family, it just went away. And I cannot count the number of people who remember going to synagogue regularly as a child with their family on Shabbat mornings, but do not bring their own children to shul. Where did that meaning go? Was it merely eclipsed by pressure to achieve at school or work, or social media, or travel, soccer leagues, stress over government dysfunction, or a worldwide pandemic, and a myriad of other things? Did we check it at the door at Ellis Island? Have we somehow forgotten about the power of Jewish life? I do not know. But I will tell you this, we need it. We need meaning, and most of us are probably searching for it in the wrong places. We need meaning because unlike our ancestors who swam in that Jewish sea, we have no framework. We have been burdened with the curse of infinite choice, paper or plastic, whitening, breath-freshening, cavity-preventing, enamel restoring, tartar-fighting toothpaste. Harvard or Yale or CMU or Pitt, Squirrel Hill or Shadyside or Lawrenceville, brand name or generic. We are constantly barraged with choices which wear us down, but also have us always second-guessing ourselves. Did I make the right choice? And ultimately, many of those choices are meaningless in the big picture. But we spend so much energy on them that if we do not have a framework to our lives, guideposts to help us along, most of us just blindly stumble from thing to thing, not framing our direction in a way that is helpful, letting the world act on us without individually acting within the world. This is likely a contributing factor to the epidemics of anxiety, depression, addiction, and the like, which plague our society. And not that Judaism is a 100% foolproof cure for all those ills, but there is no question that when one gains spiritual satisfaction from a traditional framework, the positive benefits tend to push some of those other things out of the way. And there is research that backs me up there as well. One of the primary ways in which we derive meaning from our tradition is through gathering. From the moment of Bereshit in Genesis, when God takes a piece of Adam's rib to create Eve, saying, Lo tov heyot adam levado, it is not good for this person to be alone, we understand that the fundamental building block of meaning is relationship with others. And so we gather. At the center of virtually every Jewish custom is gathering. We, of course, gather for tefillah, for prayer, as we are doing so right now. We gather for holiday meals, particularly on Shabbat and Rosh Hashanah and on Pesach. We gather for life cycle events, weddings, baby namings, britot milah, b'nei mitzvah, funerals, and so forth. We gather to learn and to celebrate. We also love to gather institutionally. There's never a shortage of Jewish organizations with a palette of alphabet soup abbreviations: JCC, JAA, JCRC, JFED, PGH, JJEP, CDS, USCJ, URJ, IS, AJC, and on and on and on. We are the only people who love gathering so much that the presidents of our organizations have a meta organization, the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. We do that gathering pretty well. Yes, I know we like to complain about our organizations and our gatherings, but that only demonstrates how much we care about the gathering. The author and consultant Priya Parker, in her book, The Art of Gathering, although not herself Jewish, praises the Jews for our gathering talents. In teaching what she calls good gathering, Ms. Parker invokes the Passover principle, that before anyone convenes or participates in any type of gathering, we should ask ourselves, why is this gathering different from all our other gatherings? What is it that makes for good gathering? What makes gathering meaningful? Intentionality. Gathering for a specific purpose. This year in particular, following our gradual and I hope ongoing emergence from the pandemic, our intentionality is something of a low-hanging fruit. Remember when we said Shechianu a few minutes ago? That simple ritual, perhaps one of the best-known brachot in our list of brachot, helped us bring these high holidays into focus. We are grateful merely for the ability to gather once again. Intentionality is the key to good gathering. And we have our own word for that. That word is kavanah. No Jewish gathering or ritual of any kind should be lacking in kavanah. It is the glue that holds our words together, that unites our hearts, minds, mouths, and hands. You may think that tefillah, that prayer, is a jumble of words in an ancient language which you do not understand. And without kavanah, it is exactly that. But if we have prepared ourselves properly to gather with kavanah, with intention, then tefillah becomes not just a jumble, but an opportunity. An opportunity to check in with ourselves, to take inventory, to meditate, to breathe, to attempt to feel the kedusha of holiness in the air around us and in our lives, to remember the others in our midst and our connections with and our obligations to them. And as far as Ms. Parker's guidance is concerned, many of the other things we do as Jews are great gathering principles. We have been preparing for these days of Teshuvah, these 10 days of repentance, for at least a month, by blowing shofar and reciting Psalm 27 every morning. And over the past 9 days, we have recited slichot, prayers asking for forgiveness, prayers of yearning every morning. And virtually every Jewish holiday requires preparation. Pesach, perhaps being the most physically extensive. And Ms. Parker also highlights an idea that I think we also do quite well, that the best kinds of gathering transport us to a temporary alternative world. To go back for a moment to something that I mentioned earlier, our lives are not saturated in Judaism like those of our ancestors. We live in multiple worlds. But most of the time, we are just Americans fully integrated into the society around us. The water in which we swim is American culture. So when we take that opportunity to do something Jewish, perform a ritual, go to a synagogue service, enjoy a festive holiday meal with family and friends, learn a piece of Talmud, and so forth, we are actually doing exactly what Ms. Parker suggests. We set up a kavanah, an intention. We speak a foreign language. We don special paraphernalia. We use choreography. We eat particular foods. We perform certain curious customs. You are sitting right now in just one corner of this temporary alternative world. And sure, it does not feel so strange to most of us, because some of us have been doing this on these days all our lives. But think of how unique and powerful this world might seem to others who have not yet experienced it. And consider how fortunate you are to have been given this holy opportunity by virtue of birth, or indeed by having joined the Jewish people. And think of how awesome it is that all of us are experiencing this holy moment together right now, gathered right here. And particularly after a year and a half of isolation, of added anxiety and distance and loneliness, consider how wonderful it is to gather right now at this moment, even as the pandemic is still not done with us. Consider how meaningful it is to be part of a community, of this community, to be a part of this Kehillah Kadoshah, this sacred congregation. So here is a brief prayer for this holy, meaningful moment of gathering. Modim anachnu lach. We are grateful to you, God, for endowing human beings with the tools to engage with physics, chemistry, and biology, and the wisdom and the ability to manipulate our world to produce vaccines which have enabled us to gather today. Thank you for giving us the ability to connect with one another, to share stories and celebrations and grief which help us through our days. Thank you for the gift of family and friends and community, for which we are so grateful as we support each other through these long months of separation. And thank you for the gift of prayer, of kavanah, intention, for the framework of tradition. How fortunate it is that we have all of these gifts. I hope that as we move forward from this point, that we continue to be grateful not only for being in each other's presence, but also for the Jewish framework that we have received to help bring meaning to that gathering. We will talk more tomorrow about how digging deep into the Jewish bookshelf can further fill your life with meaning. Shana Tova.